Een goede woord. Welcome to tonight's shiur. Celebrating Jesus Kislev. We might finish a little early to be able to go. We have a big Verbringen here in Stamford Hill, the Inspire conference, which is local, so that makes it easier. So we might finish a few minutes early. But meanwhile, let's start the shiur. Sorry, I'm just trying to manage this. So, common situation where you have a larger crowd, and it's quite common, I think, in the United Synagogue, etc., these kind of communities where they will have lots of prepare in advance small cups, and everyone has a cup.
So I just told them about it and let them see.
I'm really on. So someone's asking, is that something which he could do? Because usually the more familiar way is that you have either you drink from your becher and then you pour to everyone's for everyone, or you share the becher, or you pour off before you drink. But generally, you share from our own becher, our own cup. So how important is that? That's really the question. So now, what we have here, two sources. One is in Siman Kuf Tzadik. That's about the Kos Shel Bracha. The default term Kos Shel Bracha refers to the Kos of benching, of Birchas Hamazon. So that's Kuf Tzadik. That's the first source. The second source is from Siman Reish Ayin Aleph, which is the Dinim of Kiddush. So we'll go through those carefully. Af al pi mitzvah min hamuvchar shekol hamasubim yit'amu mikos shabracha. It is a preference that each of the participants should themselves have a taste of the kos shabracha, of the cup of blessing. Ein tzorich lit'ay mikos hamavorich. It's not imperative that they drink from that specific cup. Ela yochel kol echod litein kos lefonov. There's an alternative. Everyone has their own cup. And the bracha, which is said by the leader, is for everyone's cup also. Let's try again. So that he says is actually preferable. Because once you've drunk from your cup, so then your cup is somehow blemished, and therefore there's a preference. But actually, everyone has their own cup. That's in Hilchos Birchas Hamazon, the cup for benching. It says actually there's an advantage that everyone has their own cup. And now going into the dinim of Kiddush. So he says here, you don't have to pour from the leader who makes Kiddush, doesn't have to pour everyone else's cups unless their cups are already pegumim. And then he has to top it up because it's preferable that they should drink from cups which aren't pogum. And then he writes in Sif Lamed, the people who are the Mesubim who are sitting, joining in the meal, they shouldn't drink before the leader drinks, if they need to rely on his cup, because he's pouring to their cups. So if he's pouring to their cups, I guess before he's drunk himself, so then they should wait for him to drink before he himself, before they should wait for the leader to drink before they drink, when they've been waiting for him to pour to their cups. But if they have their own cups, then they can drink before the leader drinks, as discussed in Siman Kuf Tzadik. So what we're seeing here, it seems to be quite okay to have everyone drinking from a separate cup, and that's called the Kos Shel Bracha, because the bracha applies to every all those cups. The only, and then you ask the question, why don't we do this lechatchila? Well, the question is, if everyone's cup is a kos bracha, then everyone should have to have a revius, and everyone should have to drink rov koil, and all the requirements. If their individual cups are going to qualify as kos bracha, then it should have to fulfill the criteria of kos bracha. That's a little bit impractical that everyone should have a cup of revius, and therefore that's what we normally don't do that way, and we give everyone from the literal kos bracha. And then, and they don't have to have a shiur in what they in one little bit which they sip. Now, what we've said, it's not a chiyuv to drink. From when you hear Kiddush, you are yotze even just by listening, and therefore, either way is okay, because what we said here, even though you're going to say it's not a proper kos bracha because it's less than a shiur. I'm saying again, the question was, it's a big crowd. It's going to take him a long time to pour for everyone, perhaps to put, like they do in the synagogues, to prepare little cups for everyone. So, all right, there's one to rely on, that it's called kos bracha, and even if not, it's okay. It's only in mitzvah min hamucher. Therefore, we'll let it pass. I just want to share with you, I just got tonight, I don't know who it was, a bacher probably, called up that someone had, I guess he was listening to Havdalah, and he said the bracha of Havdalah at the same time as the one who's leading the Havdalah. So instead of being yotze from the one who's saying Havdalah, he is saying his own bracha. Don't ask me why, but that's what he did. So he's a yotze. So I said, really? He's yotze. I mean, he said a bracha on a cost of wine. It happens to be that someone else was holding the wine, someone else was drinking the wine, but he did say his bracha was said over a cup of wine, so he is yotze Havdalah. Yeah. Okay, so that's the question number one. Let's go on to question number two. So here's a woman has a Giyores, and her.
The right expression, is it recording?
She's a Giyores, and her mother is coming for a visit, and so mother's going to stay for a month, and probably her mother will want to do a bit of fry herself an egg, I don't know, do some cooking, and how to handle that. So of course you can say only cook when when I'm going to light the fire. I mean, if a goy cooks food, kosher food obviously, but so then it becomes if it's subject to the dinner of Bishul Akum, a fried egg would be subject to Bishul Akum. So then the frying pan would have a problem of status of Bishul Akum. You have to kasher it. So it is complicated. So how to avoid this? In other words, what the mother will cook will be Bishul Yisrael. So what I told her an eitzah, to prepare a yortzeit candle in the kitchen during the daytime hours, and whenever mum wants to cook something, so she put a match and put it to the fire in the yortzeit candle, and then light the fire, and in that way it's considered Bishul Yisrael. So this you have here in Simon Kufyan Gibel in Yeridea, that's the dinim of Bishul Akum, and it talks there about if a yid stokes the fire, the goyas put the food on the flame on the boil, and the yid stokes the fire. That's also called Bishul Yisrael. Then the yesh oimrim, that even if he did not stoke the fire itself, and he didn't even throw a piece of wood into the fire, but the goy lit the fire from a fire which belongs to a yid, which was lit by a yid, that's also okay. So eish mi eish, to light a fire, that the goy who lights the gas has taken the fire from a flame which was lit by a yid. So yesh oimrim, that's enough. So certainly in these circumstances, we would rely on the yesh oimrim to say that that's adequate. Is it not? It looks like not everyone agrees with that, but okay, it's certainly a valid heter. There are more brings it. You can rely on it if necessary. Let's move on. So now a Hanukkah question. Yeah, if it would be electric hob or if it'd be induction, all those kind of stuff would be much more difficult to to solve this problem. It happens, happily, this one was a gas hob, so we were able to solve it. Right. With the very modern ones, they can make a phone call and start to do a remote lighting the hob from 100 miles away. Okay, let's move on. So here, a shliach in somewhere in Europe, encourage his. He lives in one town. He's also active in a second community in another town, and they encouraged them to get a menorah made, big menorah. So they did get a menorah made, and to his dismay, the menorah's branches are in what should we say called this pyramid form. I have to find a way to explain for people who are going to be listening to the recording without the picture. So it's as the lowest, the furthest ones are lower, and then they go higher and higher until they come to the center, go down again, so a pyramid form. So he's asking, can he use this menorah? It's the idea that the lamps of the menorah have to be all in the same line. You know it probably from the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch in Siman Kuf Lamed Tes, and I've mentioned several times that the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, in addition to drawing obviously from the Shulchan Aruch, but it also has got three main sources, which he almost quotes verbatim, and they are the Alter Rebbe, the Chayei Odom, and the Siddur Derech HaChaim. These are his three main sources. It's interesting. If you the beginning of Kuf Lamed Tes, way I remember which simon is for Hanukkah, because Kuf Lamed Tes is kalt, so you remember that Hanukkah is when it's cold. So he starts off with the history of the Giyores, the Yom Hashemanoim, and Yehudis, etc. That's pretty much word for word from Chayei Odom in Klal Kuf Nun Dalet. At any rate, so the Chayei Odom is the source who says that the lights of the menorah should be in a straight line, not one higher, one higher, one lower. So that's the earliest source which I could find. Although, yes, around the table yesterday at the Shabbos table, we discussed this, and one of the children said, well, the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash is obviously in a straight line. The line, that's all the pictures say so, and the Chayre, that's the pshat in the pasuk also. So, well, we don't find a halacha earlier. Well, I did suggest to the shliach, what you could do is to use this menorah with candles, and use taller candles on the outer branches, and use shorter candles as you get towards the middle. And that way, the flames will all be on the same level. That's one way of solving it. I wasn't keen to say it's okay, but the way it is, particularly because some 20 years ago, during this time of the year, I was in Sweden, and I saw in most houses, in their front window, they had a pyramid of lights, which you see on the right side of the screen. And I did a little bit of research, and it's got to do with Kratzburg. It's got to do with this season. What exactly is the deep meaning of it? Don't worry about it. It's some pagan stuff, but it is a Goisha custom to have that, and that's probably why the smith in this shtetl somewhere in Europe, he made candles. He made it like the Goisha style, and that's why I'm not keen to just say don't worry about it, because it's actually going to be misleading that this is the way you'd make a menorah. So that was one suggestion, to use different sizes of candles to overcome the problem, or to put pipes over the candles, and in that way to be able to raise them all to the same level. Don't use plastic pipes, because plastic is flammable. Unfortunately, there was a shliach who had what they call these little squares, a menorah made of those little squares, and forgotten what the word is, and yeah, it melted and created a fire, and the Chabad house was destroyed because of a plastic menorah. So, right. Let's move on. So here's a young couple, recently got married, and they got married in Europe and moved to Eretz Yisrael, where he will be learning in Kailul. He's learning in Kailul, and he's happily settled in with Chavrusas and with teachers, etc. tutors, and then his wife's grandfather passed away, and so she feels very. It's important for her to go back to Europe to join her family for a few days. So he's asking. There's a din of Shana Rishoina, and she's asking, "Am I obliged also to go with her? Because really, I'm really not keen to disrupt the stability which I have at the moment." So it's very interesting. The mitzvah of Shana Rishoina is a posuk chumash. It says that for the first year he doesn't lo yetze batzava v'simach hasishtei asher lokach. So there is a mitzvah, and it's interesting. It's not anywhere. There's no siman in Shulchan Aruch. It's not brought in the Shulchan Aruch. This din of Shana Rishoina. So it is mentioned in Pischei Tshuva in Even Ezer Siman Samach Daled. So it's talking about the Sheva Brachas. So in the note, he talks about the inyan of Shana Rishoina. All right, so a couple of let's go through this carefully. Now, as I mentioned, the Shana Rishoina in the Pasuk talks about going to the army, to the military. Does it mean also that you're not allowed to travel for business or for pleasure? So the Radvaz actually was under the, he mentions this point, that the Isur min HaTorah is only if he goes out for battle. But if he's going for other things, then that's not included in the Isur min HaTorah. The Pischei Tshuva says, he quotes from Shiur of Chochmas Odom, who writes that the Radvaz did not notice that in the Pardes, which is attributed to Rashi, and in the Chinuch, they say that the issue of leaving his wife during the Shana Rishoina also includes going for a business trip. And then he says, Nira de Mahani Michilosav Shizmeichel. Now let's now look at the Chinuch. So we have the mitzvah is brought in the Chinuch, number Tovkuf Pei Beis, that's 582. And he says, this is just the last piece of a long discussion. If the husband leaves the wife during the first year, Yomim Rabim, for a long period, for many days, even if she's moichel, that he's violated the asay. He's got a mitzvah of v'simach hasishta. There's lo yetze and there's a mitzvah asay. V'simach hasishta. If he goes away for Yomim Rabim, he's violated that mitzvah. He's missed out on that mitzvah. If he does want to go out for Dvar mitzvah, sorry, for Yomim Ma'otim, for a few days, then min hadoime, it makes sense that the aim was a bittul mitzvah. See, first of all, he makes a distinction between Yomim Rabim and Yomim Ma'otim. Second distinction, and then he says, although I've said that Mechila won't help, that there are those who say that Mechila does help. So now we've got here several factors. Number one, does Mechila help? Well, some Machlokas Rishonim. Does it apply to other situations other than military? It's also not so clear. On top of this, actually, and another factor is it's not Yomim Rabim, it's Yomim Ma'otim. To go for 4 days to there and back, I think is definitely under the category of Yomim Ma'otim. And on top of all of this, it's her initiative. She wants to go. And therefore, it's on the contrary, him letting her go without him having to schlep, perhaps in that is also fulfilling the inyan of the Simach HaSishtoi in some way. At any rate, I said it's okay. Okay, so just interesting that why is this not mentioned in Shulchan Aruch as a halacha? Very interesting. I have seen years ago, I saw a full sefer on the mitzvah of Shana Rishoina. Let's move on. So here's a question which I got this past week, that someone, he sells some kind of goods and there's a fair. This time of the year, a lot of people are spending money, preparing for parties, etc. And so there's a fair of this kind of stuff, and it's for 5 days, starting from Thursday till Monday. And he rented a stall there, and is concerned that if he closes for Shabbos, he can get into trouble with the organizers. They will take it very, they would not be happy that there's a store closed for Shabbos. So he's asking whether he has a Goyshe worker, could he somehow have the Goyshe worker run the stall? He's not interested in the takings of Shabbos. He just doesn't want to get into the hassle with the upset with the organizers for being closed on Shabbos. So very interesting. We have here a letter of the Alter Rebbe, and this is, I'm sorry, I've only got that Rashi writing on the screen. It's printed in the back of the Shulchan Aruch, and in the newer edition, this is in the back of Chelik base. And it's also in the Shalos Teshuvos of the Alter Rebbe in that volume. But again, it's interesting. It's not a letter in response to a specific question. It's more like a michtov kloli, like a general letter to the Jewish community, which just especially since it's Hemshech to Yutas Kislev, it struck me as an interesting aspect of the Alter Rebbe's leadership. In addition to being a leader of Chassidim, as a leader of Klal Yisrael, and there's a problem in Yiddishkeit. So he's writing a general letter to Yidden, at least in his country, in his region, about this Indian, which I don't know whether I've mentioned this on the anash.org, which also hosts this year. They have regular podcasts done by Rabbi Beryl Levin. Very, very interesting. He's talking about the history of the library, and it's very interesting. So he had once a whole talk about the printing of the Shas in Slavita, and he presents it that the Alter Rebbe was actually the main promoter of this Shas. It wasn't as if there was some businessman who wanted to print a Shas and the Alter Rebbe gave him the support. It was the other way around. It was the Alter Rebbe took the initiative. He saw the need to print a Shas, and he actually paid in advance for the Magihim to get it done quickly and properly. And so this whole project of the printing of Shas in Slavita was actually the Alter Rebbe's project. So it's another not very well-known detail of the Alter Rebbe's taking responsibility for Klal Yisrael. Eden doesn't, need to have Giyores, so need to have a Shas. And then later there was a whole massive machlokas with the Vilna print, and I'm not going to go into that history now. Now, so let's come back. Here's the letter. It's like you see the opening of the letter. To tell all Yidden, the holy congregation, holy people, how is the issue of machzikin michyo b'Shabbos, having many Yidden had what they call in Yiddish kretschmers. They had these inns. And the Goyish customers obviously would not miss having their drink of vodka over Shabbos. So they had to be open on Shabbos somehow. And how would they be open and be able to sell drinks to the Goyim without violating Shabbos? So this was a very common problem. And even if you have just a Goyish worker, that doesn't solve your problem. And the Alter Rebbe says, really, we should take some very strong steps to block the whole thing, but for sure, Yisrael Am Kodesh V'Toher, they don't need to have draconian steps, and because we've got a way of solving it in a permitted way, and if there'll be someone who nevertheless doesn't take heed of this permitted way and does it in a forbidden way, so then it's a chiyuv gomor that he should be baris barabim to stop this misconduct. But those who listen, tov aleim birchas tov. So what is exactly the Alter Rebbe's solution? So he says like this. You find a goy and you tell him the following. If I would be hiring you as a worker for me, so then let's say for one keg of beer, don't ask me how big a keg is, but okay. One keg of beer, I would have to pay you, let's say, 50 kopkas for the effort in selling, for the time and effort of selling that keg of beer. So now, instead of me paying you 50 kopkas for the sale, you're selling a keg of beer, I'm selling you the whole keg of beer for whatever the retail price is, minus the 50 kopkas. So you will get those 50 kopkas as your profit, instead of saying I'm selling it to you for 10 rubles and I'll pay you 50 kopkas for your efforts in this sale, I'm selling it to you for 19 rubles plus, and the 50 kopkas you'll keep as your profit. And so this is, and he says, and Yisrael yakne loy belev sholem, and I'm giving it to you. He says, I'm selling it to you, this mashke, and I'm being makne to you belev sholem, wholeheartedly, for the amount which we've agreed. That means the retail price minus, let's say, 5% or something, which is the to pay for the workers' takings. And then he says the Yisrael, the Jewish owner, is allowed to be present when the goy is taking from the warehouse, from the storage, to bring to the retail area. To stand there by the actual retail, no, but to monitor how much is being brought from the storage into the retail area, that's permissible. So I found this very, very interesting, that he doesn't say a single word of a physical kinyan. He says verbally, ani moichelecha. He says, is makne belev sholem, for the money, etc., which will be paid after Shabbos. And so there's no kinyan in the formal sense, and yet that's the Alter Rebbe's solution. And so I said the same thing over here. You can do the same method with this fare. You say to your goysha worker that instead of me hiring you for the day, you will, whatever you sell in retail, 5% of the set, it's yours. You've bought the item from me, and 5% of your takings will be your income, or whatever percent you can agree, what's reasonably, etc. I said I found this surprising, that there's no technical kinyan done before Shabbos. So I wrote to Rabbi Beryl Levin, who, in addition to so many things which is written about, but he particularly in Amiril and Adochri, this area he has published and written a lot. And I asked him, he says he himself has also been struggling with that. But yeah, so all right, so the Alter Rebbe says it's okay. That's good. Okay, so let's go on to the next thing. Here's a question from a shliach somewhere in France, and they have their houses near the Chabad house, but here they want to have a kiddush. They have a kiddush in the Chabad house, and they want to use some kind of crock pot for cholent. I asked them, why don't you have a plug-in hot plate? But at any rate, this is what they're asking. So what's the shaila? So I asked them, is the food edible before Shabbos? Let's explain something. To be able to leave food to cook on Shabbos, can you put up raw food before Shabbos? So if you have a blech, which is the equivalent of what it says in the Gemara about goref v'kotim, of raking out the coals or covering the coals with ash. So the equivalent would be, we have the fire is covered, and the more modern equivalent is this plug-in plate, which is the equivalent of the blech. So, okay, so that would solve the problem. But in this slow cooker, I don't see an easy solution with a blech. Incidentally, on Friday, I was in a conversation with someone where about a crock pot. The regular crock pots have got like a metal housing, and then you have a ceramic pot which sits inside the outer housing, and so they want to be able to take out the ceramic, give some of the younger children some hot potatoes from the cholent, and then to be able to put it back. So I said, in order to be able to put it back, you need to have the equivalent of a blech, that the source of heat should be covered. So it's well known. So you put a sheet of silver foil, of aluminum foil, inside the base, and so then when you want to put it back, so the fire is the normal source of heat is covered. Somehow, my impression is that some of these, which we have on the screen, that idea of a separate insert is not so practical. So where's the blech? So again, to put up food that you should cook on Shabbos, either you have a blech, or the food is past Machal Ben Derasoi, which means either third cooked or half cooked. But she's putting up the cholent raw at the beginning of Shabbos. So how do you solve the problem of the blech, the need for a blech? So she says, rightly, she puts in a piece of raw meat and switches on just before Shabbos. And here, this is what you have here in Simulation on Gimel, where you have that if you put in a raw piece of meat, then because the whole reason for having to have a blech and all of that is because the style of cooking those days was that you kept on poking the fire. It was stoking the flames. That was the normal procedure. But if it's something which you could eat tonight, then there's a temptation to stoke the flames to get it ready for the meal. If it's clearly not going to be ready for tonight, and it's by tomorrow it'll be ready in any case without tampering with the fire. So that's okay. So that's what she does. She puts in a piece of raw meat, and there's no way it's going to be ready for tonight. And as a result, doesn't need to have a blech of sorts. Okay, that solves one problem. The other problem is, are you allowed to ladle out from this pot whilst it's sitting, whilst it's sitting on the fire effectively? Normally, when we serve the cholent, etc., we take the pot away from the fire, and then we serve. But here, if it's not practical, how can you ladle out from this electric pot? That's the other problem. So, looking at what Rav Forkash in his volume on Shabbos, got 4 volumes, Shabbos Halocho. So he says, B'shas Chak, if you cannot, now I'll tell you what the Shas Chak is. You're a bocher in 749 or in 1414, and you want to have some cholent. It's around 10 o'clock, and this massive pot, it's too heavy for you to take off the fire, and you want to have a bit of cholent, so Shas Chak. Are you allowed to ladle out a little bit from whilst it's still on the fire? So he says B'shas Chak, that you cannot take the pot off the fire because it's too heavy, or that you won't be able to fulfill the criteria of Chazorah. So he says, if it's fully cooked, then you would be allowed to ladle out. So that's B'shas Chak. I don't like to rely on a Shas Chak on a regular basis, and therefore, so recommended that they have this pot plugged into a timer, and so by the time they come ready to serve, it's switched off, and in that way you could say it's no longer on the fire, although it's a clearation. So I'm not fully confident with that, but it is that there's no longer a fire there, and therefore, but since B'shas Chak you can take it out in any case, so we'll call it as switched. That is as if it's off the fire, and they can use it that way. All right, let's. So that's 6. Okay, so that number shouldn't be there. Okay. USB powered heated jacket. You thought you've seen it all, yeah? So this is a new invention, evidently. It's a jacket, looks like any other jacket, Blair, whatever, and it's got wires in it, and you have a USB power unit, like people have to charge their phones when they run out of power. So you're keeping it in one of the pockets, and then so he's asking, can you wear it on Shabbos? This is the picture which you can see is there's a button where the finger is. There's a button to press to get it on, to get on higher, lower, different levels of temperature. Now, I'm sure some of you remember these electric blankets. I haven't seen them for years in advertised, but there used to be these plug-in electric blankets, and I remember seeing someone being discussed whether you can use them on Shabbos. But coming back to our point, so this question actually came from a town where they do have an Eruv, where they rely on the Eruv. So my first question was, what about the battery pack, the power pack? You're carrying the power pack. They said they got an Erev, they rely on the Erev. So then, if that's the case, then the question is about wearing it on Shabbos. You certainly wouldn't be allowed to switch it on Shabbos. So if it's already switched on before Shabbos, so the only thing I'd be concerned that you might come to press the button and that you'd have to cover the button. I don't have any. It's not written anywhere in Shulchan Aruch what I'm saying, but it is logical that you should cover the button. That you shouldn't, by mistake, come to switch it on or off on Shabbos. But the fact that it's electronically heated, that in itself should not be a problem. Okay, let's move on. Again, Yitzchak Kislev, so we a halacha about the Alter from the Alter Rebbe. So we have here two halachas. The question was, if someone's talus fell off totally, do you make a brocha when you put it back on? So here we have for Siman Ches, one who's wearing his talus and it fell off. When he puts it back on, he has to make a new brocha because it fell off without his awareness, and therefore, the fact that he had in mind that to put it back on. I'm not sure what he mean. He had in mind. Perhaps it means because it fell off involuntarily. Therefore, his having in mind doesn't help. That's if it fell off totally. But if part of it's remained on his body, then he doesn't need to make a brach. Okay. That is in the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch. In the Siddur, we have an interesting situation. And just this past Rosh Chodesh, we had a call that someone had daven Shacharis, and he forgot his Rosh Chodesh, and he's got the kids in the car, and he's driving the kids to school, and then he's going off to work, and then he realized he didn't daven Musaf. Does he have to drive back home to pick up his talus to daven Musaf? By the way, he has to daven Shacharis on Shemon Esrei again also. So, do you have to go out of your way to get a talus to daven Musaf? Yes, it's Shas Adchak. Of course, you yotze without a talus, but certainly as a lechatchila, one should be using a talus for Musaf. Well, he has to daven Shemon Esrei of Shacharis also again. So, all right, but he wouldn't have to make a new bracha on the talus. And that's the point which I want to share with you now. He doesn't need to make a new bracha on the talus, which he took off with intent. He folded it, put it away till tomorrow. He doesn't have to make a new bracha on the talus. So let's read what Alter Rebbe writes here. One who takes off his talus temporarily with the intention to put it back on doesn't make a new bracha. Even if he took it off al das with the intention not to put it back on later, right away, and then he changes his mind and he wants to put it back on right away. So he took it off, it's withdrawn. But if he's wearing a talus cotton, then he doesn't have to make a new bracha. So here he says that the presence of the talus cotton in your body acts as a bridge, that the taking off of the talus with the intention of not wearing it again till tomorrow is you don't have to make a new bracha. So therefore you ask the question, should falling off of the talus be worse than taking off the talus with the intention of deliberate, conscious not intending to put it back on? That's the dilemma here. So you could argue that it's no worse, and they shouldn't have to make a new bracha. On the other hand, you could say, no, when you take off the talus and you put it away, but you're also thinking of your talus cotton, and that you haven't withdrawn from the mitzvah. When the talus falls off, you're not thinking altogether, and therefore the presence of the talus cotton doesn't help. You could argue both ways. I'm more inclined to say it doesn't help, but I told the fellow that you don't, the minig is, as far as I know, you don't make a new bracha because of this suffix, possibly because it's wearing a talus cotton. Therefore, you wouldn't make another bracha, and we always say suffix brachas lahakim. Okay, let's move on. So now someone's asking about giving an aliyah to someone who's just in shirt sleeves. In a Chabad house, sometimes, certainly in hotter climates, sometimes they come in wearing shorts, and the Chabad house welcomes everyone the way they come. Question is, when giving them an aliyah, should you offer them a talus? Now, etc. So in other shuls, that someone has an aliyah, whatever they're wearing, but they're offered a talus. In Chabad, it's not so standard, and the simple reason is, as we all remember in the Til Tovshin Memches, so the Rebbe came out for Shacharis, sorry, not came out for Kriyas HaTorah on Mondays and Thursdays, and the Rebbe was just wearing his kapot. He wasn't wearing a talus. The Rebbe, whenever he davened, well, that was his business, but he wasn't wearing a talus, and he had an aliyah, and so we're not particular about having a talus when you have an aliyah. My uncle, Dayan Raskin, Allah Shalom, he wore a talus. By the way, he didn't wear his tefillin for some reason, but he also wasn't davening. He put in a talus, but the Rebbe would have an aliyah just with a kapot and the hat. All right, so on the bottom of the page we have from the Shari Afrai, which is a sefer dedicated to the din of Kriyas HaTorah, and he says when he has the person who has an aliyah shouldn't just have the mitznefes, which is like the yarmulke, which he would walk around at home. Rather, he should put on his head, should wear a hat, which he would when he would go to greet someone respectable. So then you'd put on a hat. Of course, that has changed in contemporary society, but in certainly going back 50 years ago, etc., it would be out of respect you'd be wearing a hat. And so that's where, when someone has an aliyah, they're just wearing a yarmulke, we would offer them a hat. Then he says, if there is a talus with tzitzis available, so then he should also wear the talus, covered hatzibur, even for Shabbos mincha. I guess it's not wearing a talus automatically, and use a borrowed talus and not make a bracha. Okay, so he's talking about wearing a talus. So now what we're going to see here is two places. One in Hilchos Tefillah, where you have that derech hachacham v'talmideim shelo yispalu ela kashen hatufim. That when we daven, we are wrapped with, so either with a talus or with a jacket, as we're going to see in the second quote, which is from the Dinim of Kesher Bracha. Simon Kuf Pei Beis, is it? Ituf, which says that the Kesher Bracha has 10 requirements, and one of them is ituf. Yesh mishahoy misata v'tali. So there were those who would wear a talus for benching, for leading the benching at least, and there were those who would put a sudar, that extra cloth, on their head. We don't have ituf in that sense, but Yirei Shamayim should bench. We should make sure to bench with wearing not just the mitznefes, which is the yarmulke, but to wear a hat for benching. And there are also those who are particular to wear a beged elyon, to wear a jacket. So that's where it comes from, the idea of wearing hat and jacket as an alternative to wearing a talus. So coming back to davening, so that's why we are particular. Of course, a married person wears a talus for shacharis, but for other tefillas, we are particular to wear a hat and jacket because of this derech as the equivalent of ituf. And so the same thing for aliyah l'Torah. So it would be appropriate to encourage the person to wear a jacket. And the practical dilemma is, would that work in a Chabad house setting? That you have a jacket, some shmata jacket that's in there for everyone to put on. I just don't see that working. And therefore, the option of offering a talus may be an idea. It's something which to be considered if it will be a davar miskabel, and that's where the likelihood of the person has been to other shuls before. That's the expected thing, to wear something more than just a shirt while having an aliyah. So then why should the Chabad house be less than that? Okay, finally, the last thing which we have on our sheet is about a mezuzah question, and that is that the mezuzah needs to be on the right side, and it needs to be a tefach within the tefach of the opening. So normally we put the mezuzah mamish in the door frame, within the door frame, If not, it's at least within a tefach for the door frame. Okay, here we have an issue. The question was, which I was asked on Friday, when you have like accordion doors, and the accordion doors open to the right, so then the accordion doors themselves are they are a couple of tefachim thick. Therefore, the mezuzah is more than a tefach away from the where you can walk through. Imagine also you had a very thick door, like a safe, and the door itself is more than a tefach thick. So then, inevitably, you're not going to have the mezuzah within a tefach of walking space, although it's at the edge of the door frame. So this is in this sefer called Pischei She'orim, an American sefer, about 20-30 years old, contemporary sefer, and he talks about this folding door, and when it's folded towards the mezuzah is more than a tefach away. So he says sorchi on whether you can make a bracha on such a door, on such a mezuzah, because possibly you're not fulfilling, but we don't have another alternative. So he says he seems to be advising to put up a mezuzah but without a bracha. Okay, I've gone through the list of questions today. I'll share with you one more, which came in on Friday, and that was about someone who's going to it was a question I got just before Shabbos from New York. Someone's traveling from the United States to Singapore during Hanukkah, and he's going to miss a day. He'll have a 7-day Hanukkah. And his question would be, when he arrives there and it comes, they're lighting the 4th candle, and for him, last night he did 2 candles, so tonight he should do 3 candles. So does he do like them, or does he follow his own speed? Now there's 2 opinions in the Gemara. Why we add an extra candle each night? Is it keneged yomim hanichnosim? In other words, like a calendar ticking off the days which we have passed so far, according to Bishul, obviously, or is it malin bakodesh, a personal idea of striving every day, doing something extra? And in this context, in this situation, we'll have a difference between the 2. If you say it's got to do with Yom HaNichnosim, then he should just follow the minig of Singapore. If it's got to do with Moisif V'Hoilech, then he should be Moisif on where he's from 2 to go to 3 and so on. So, but that's obvious to me that at the end of Hanukkah in Singapore, he's not going to have an extra day to light in the day after Hanukkah, to light an 8th candle. This is nonsense. If it's not Hanukkah, then it's a bracha levator to light. And therefore, I was more inclined to say, follow the calendar feature. So despite the Chabad minig, or the Rebbe is the thing about crossing the date line during Sfira So'ima. Sfira So'ima is a different thing. That's a different Torah, that you're built up to Shavuos through your counting. That's a different story. Here, Hanukkah, it's totally, it's quite a different halacha, and therefore my conclusion was he should just follow what the local people are doing, and if they're doing the 4th light, he'll light the 4th one. He'll have missed out on lighting the 3rd time. Okay, that's part of the. That doesn't mean he's not allowed to travel. Okay, he's going to miss out one night of Hanukkah. That's inevitable. Yeah. Okay. I wish you a Spiduyas Peilos and Shana Tova Beliman Achsidis or Drocheho, and should see. We should see that be'eni bosa v'sechazeno inenu v'shuv chol tziyim barachimim, and we should hear b'seiras toves Yeshua's v'nechomes kol tov.
Amen.